Thank you, Chair. We're live on YouTube, so I'll hand over to you to start. Sorry, you're muted, Chair.
I said I was having trouble. This IT system's wonderful. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to East Devon District Council's virtual consultative scrutiny meeting on the 6th of October 2022. I'm your chair, Councillor Mike Allen, and I'd like to welcome anyone who is watching the meeting via live streaming. I'd like to remind both members and public who are watching that this Council has delegated much of its decision-taking power to senior officers until the 31st of October 2022 due to concerns about COVID. And consequently, the meeting's being held remotely and on a consultative basis only. But we'll keep as closely as possible to the procedural rules detailed in our Constitution. You can view the meeting live online and it will be recorded. And please bear this in mind as we go through the meeting, because I want to remind colleagues to be careful with their language and that the Code of Conduct applies throughout our meeting. And we reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant disrupting the meeting by whatever means. And I've no doubt that this trust would have preferred that arrangement up in Birmingham. We would like you please to turn off any telephone devices, or at least turn them onto silent. And as the meeting's really quite dependent on internet connections and a power supply, in the event of a break in the internet connection or a power cut, please bear with us as we try and reconnect, which we'll try and do within 15 minutes. But if we're not able to reconnect, we'll reconsider and the meeting will be adjourned and reconvened at a later date. Please check the committee page on our website for details if that happens. And please make sure all microphones are muted when you're not speaking. That avoids things like dogs barking and wives and husbands coming in and various other disruptions. So it would help if you don't repeat what somebody else has said, and that you keep your points short, because we've got a busy meeting tonight. But if you do want to comment, please raise your electronic hands and we'll call you in turn. Now, all councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting, and any member of the public who wants to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website, worldwideweb.eastdevon.gov.uk. We'll now start the meeting by doing a roll call of committee members here present. And when you hear your name, please unmute your microphone and confirm by saying, "I'm present." When you've confirmed you are present, please mute your microphone again. Thank you. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Or Wendy.
So, yes, it's me. Start with
you.
yourself, Chair. Councillor Allen.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Bonetta. No. Councillor Bruce.
I'm here, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman.
I'm here, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davey.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner. No. Councillor Kemp.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Key.
Present, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Parr.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Rylance.
Present.
And Councillor Wibley.
Present, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm the meeting is quorate.
That's brilliant. I'd just like to invite nominations for Vice Chair and put forward the name of Jamie Kemp. Does anybody have an alternative? dead silence means, Jamie, that you have made it. Congratulations. I hope that we can regularise this at the council, because you've been put forward by Paul Arnott, haven't you? Good.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Let's move to minutes of the previous meeting. Has anybody got any comments about their accuracy, please? In which case, will anybody object to them being approved? Fine. In that case, they're approved. Any apologies that you want to mention, Sarah? You did mention 3.
Yes, we do have apologies, Chair, from Councillor Bailey, Councillor Hawkins and Councillor Woodward. And can I just confirm for the record that there are no public speakers tonight? Okay,
thank you ever so much. So we need to move to declarations of interest, which I can say that from my viewpoint, there are none, but I'll leave it to Sarah and Wendy to take you through the declarations.
Thank you. So has Councillor Bonetta joined the meeting yet? No. Councillor Bruce?
Nothing to declare, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman?
Nothing to declare, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Davey?
Nothing from me either, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner, I don't think is here. Councillor Key?
Nothing, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Kemp?
Nothing, thank you.
Councillor Parr?
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rylance? I think you're on mute, Councillor Rylance.
Oh no, I did answer. Did you not hear me?
Oh,
Okay,
sorry, no, I didn't hear you.
Oh, and I have nothing. I have nothing to declare.
Thank you. And Councillor Wibley?
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you very much. And are there any other councillors in the meeting who want to declare an interest in any of the items listed on the agenda, please? No, I see no hands up, so back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. There are no confidential or exempt items tonight, and there are no items identified in terms of a call-in by members. So we therefore can move on to item 8, which is discussion that we adjourned about water, wastewater, water supply and water quality. Ed, you were in the middle of telling us that some of the planning issues there. Do you want to very briefly bring us back up to date?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So yeah, just very quickly, this report was designed to sort of highlight the planning situation in terms of water management issues and the planning process. And as with most planning issues, we obviously looked at National Planning Policy Framework, National Planning Statements and PPG for guidance, and there is a whole section of planning practice guidance, in fact, on water supply, wastewater and water quality issues. And I've tried to pick out the main points in the first section of the report, which in relation to the particular issue in this case, I guess the main one is that of wastewater. And it clearly says that consideration of these issues could involve considering the sufficiency and capacity of wastewater infrastructure, circumstances where private treatment works may be accepted, and considering the capacity of the environment to receive effluent from developments. So very key planning issues that we have to consider through both the plan making process and the planning application process. In terms of plan making process, the PPG identifies water cycle studies as a means of understanding those issues in terms of work that we do, and drainage strategies, which are very much something that the water companies produce. The report then goes on to talk a bit about the role of South West Water and the importance of privatisation in terms of how they are funded. And it's important to note that unlike lots of other types of infrastructure, their infrastructure is not funded through planning obligations, but is funded through their business plan, fundamentally, their prices that they charge their customers in terms of water rates and charges, and connection charges that they charge to developers. So they are effectively a self-funding business in that sense. In terms of what we do, I've mentioned a water cycle study, and we have commissioned consultants who are currently undertaking a water cycle study to support work on our new local plan. And I've included a brief extract of the brief for their work, which does include assessing wastewater capacity for overall development needs, and ensuring there's adequate water supply and wastewater capacity for allocations coming forward. So we look forward to them reporting on that work later in the year. They will, as part of their commission, is designed for them to liaise with South West Water and discuss those issues with them and understand the capacity issues and how and if they can be addressed. We've also been liaising with Natural England and the Environment Agency through work on the local plan, and we'll continue to do so. And as we did through the Cranbrook plan, which is now hopefully heading towards adoption after a long examination process. The other element where the planning process obviously gets involved is in terms of planning applications themselves, and we do consult with South West Water on applications that will have an impact on their infrastructure, and they are quite good at responding. However, they rarely object to those applications, you know, have yet to raise substantive issues in terms of the development proposed at Cranbrook and the strategic growth in that part of the district, which we know, well, we understand is causing problems in terms of the capacity in many of the local villages in that area. So hopefully this is useful background in terms of the role of South West Water and how we work with them as a planning authority, as well as the Environment Agency and Natural England. And hopefully it's useful in informing members' work today and in the future in terms of understanding these issues and how we address them with South West Water. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ed. That's very good to bring us back up to date. I know Councillor Jess Bailey had a number of comments on the veracity of South West Water's inputs, and so we'll maybe come back to a discussion on that. But can we take any comments on the wastewater and water supply and quality at this stage, and then go on to look at the beach and river water quality? And I think Jamie will bring forward some comments from Jeff Young, or Jeff Young can comment. He was very keen on commenting. It was a last minute intervention, and Jeff has been trying to find a way of getting his message across, which is perfectly legitimate as an advisory item. And then I'll leave it to Jamie to take through what is appropriate at the next stage. Now, we have Maddie Chapman, who would like to comment, but we'll start with Eleanor Rylance.
Thank you, Chair. So I did have a few questions that I was really getting poised to ask when we were so interrupted a month ago. And my first question is, when we were interviewing the South West Water representative, was asking him questions back in October, I think he said that they were able to comment on major planning applications, but they weren't statutory consultees. Do you genuinely feel that they're sufficiently involved at the sort of planning stage of major developments, and that they are using realistic modelling about the output? And as a sort of corollary to that question, I suppose, do you know what climate change modelling is being used? Because obviously this is infrastructure that's going to last some decades. Well, hopefully the 150 years that the Victorian infrastructure has. But do we know which scenarios they're working to in terms of extreme weather events and tidal surges and things? Yeah, so that's all I have to ask at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, I've been asking the same question of the Environment Agency, to be honest, and it may be that Mr. Freeman or Mr. Arnott might like to comment on that particular issue. I mean Mr. Arnott or Ed Freeman, because until Councillor Ledger takes over on November the 1st, that Councillor Arnott is still portfolio holder for this area. So any comments, please?
Thank you, Chair. Shall I start?
Okay.
I think in terms of whether South West Water is sufficiently involved, I think we do everything we can to involve them. As you say, I don't think they're a statutory consultee, but we do consult them anyway, and they do respond. In terms of, and as well through the plan making process, in fairness to them, we have consulted and engaged them, and they do respond and advise us. As to their modelling, I have no idea, to be honest, in terms of the modelling they use and how that works. Really, the process is very much of us asking them, saying this is the development that that's proposed through this application, or that we're proposing to allocate in this local plan or through the Cranbrook plan. Are you satisfied that there's sufficient capacity and that the needs of this development can be met? And often those answers are obviously quite succinct. Yes, we have sufficient capacity to accommodate this, or sufficient capacity can be made available in the future through enhancements. What we don't necessarily get is very detailed explanations, which I think is perhaps what's being asked for, and an understanding of their modelling, their thinking, because their responses don't necessarily coincide with the evidence we're seeing on the ground, I suppose, is the best way of putting it. And I think that's really where the water cycle study comes in, and that's really why we felt the need to appoint consultants who are experts in this work. So we've got Royal Haskning doing that water cycle study, so that they can challenge South West Water and what they're saying and the modelling that they're using, and challenge that from an equal base of knowledge and expertise that we do not have in-house to be able to do that. So I very much hope that that's what Royal Haskning are doing for us at the moment, and we will gain a much better understanding of the situation, the basis upon which South West Water are advising us, and whether or not that's sound in the views of our consultants, to inform the work we're doing on the local plan. But I don't profess to be any kind of expert or understand their modelling or those issues. That's why we've got those consultants on board. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Just as a side issue, have you consulted Environment Agency, because they've just done a lot of modelling on the impact of climate change?
Yes, so the Environment Agency and Natural England are statutory consultees, so they will be consulted as required under the legislation and are consulted on the local plan, and indeed were heavily involved in the Cranbrook plan, commenting at various points during its production. Okay.
I'm going to ask Maddie to be patient, because I'm trying to move through the people who are not sitting on the committee and take their comments. So we've come to Councillor Skinner.
Thank you, Chair. And Ed, you'll know as well as anybody that the meeting we had only this week talking about South West Water and Cranbrook and the issues in Cliff St Mary and the like that Councillor Howe was highlighting, that are real serious issues at the moment. And the issue that he was raising, of course, is how could we be putting more housing onto a system that isn't even coping with the sort of sewage problems that we're already encompassing. So, and there was a sort of a caveat that we went through with the Cranbrook plan, as you well know, but there was a very, very sort of heavy guarded statement from ourselves, talking about, of course, the relationship between having information from people like South West Water and then, say for argument's sake, a planning application that may come forward in an area that, I've just picked St Mary as a prime example, for an application to come through there, when in actual fact, the already existing infrastructure for wastewater is broken, and how they're going to deal with not only what would be deemed to be the new development coming forward, but also the already existing problem that exists. And in lay planning terms, Ed, I think really where we were trying to get to is understand is, if we as members felt that there was an issue that had not been overcome, in planning terms, could we say we refuse this application on the basis that the wastewater or South West Water's ability to have sewage system that's workable, would that stand up? And that's one of the issues that was really debated for quite a long time on I forget, it was Tuesday or whatever it was this week, and it's just something interesting to have here because in a different sort of format, really. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Jeff, you wanted to come in and comment at this stage?
Yes, please. Regarding modelling for climate change, South West Water are responsible for dealing with taking foul sewage away from all modern housing. Up until the 1960s, it was dual surface water and foul sewage. Since then, it's been separated. So when you're looking at modelling for climate change, there's not much that needs to be modelled for South West Water because they're not dealing with, when they're talking about new housing, they're not dealing with the surface water flooding. All they're doing is the amount of sewage that is, and now from your taps and from your loos, the water from your house is going down the drain. So the modelling for climate change only matters to the sewage systems that were built up until the 1960s. And we know they can't cope now. And with climate change and more water tumbling from the sky onto our roads and onto our surfaces, that's creating the problem at the moment. Yeah, well, we'll come to some of the suggestions you've got to make in the next point. But any comments, please, from Megan Armstrong?
Sorry, yes, Chair, thanks. It's just a quick one because I didn't quite catch what Councillor Ryland said at the beginning, but I've just had and I've not read the report completely fully, but I've just had a scan through, and I think there's some reference to the leak. It doesn't actually say leakages, but that's basically how I read it. That really worries me, and I think it might be something Jeff's talked about, the sewage and all that sort of thing, but it's about the leakages in pipes. And I know I've personally had issues with water leaking pipes and have reported it. And South West Water don't do a very good job, in my view, because they just say the problem is so huge, the pipes are so old, that they're never going to be able to, that's the impression I get, they're never going to be able to resolve the issue of all this loss of, took millions, goodness knows how many gallons of water we're losing all the time. And I'm not sure whether that's been a question already asked in previous meetings. I apologise if it has, but I just think it's something that we need to be really aware of, not just about the wastewater, but about the fresh water being wasted unduly. And you know, it should be a real priority for South West Water, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Now, perhaps we can move into committee now. So, Maddie, you've been very patient. I'll come to you first and then to Alistair.
Thank you, Chair. My concern is surface water. With the new development at Goodmore's Farm with the underground springs, they do have holding tanks there, which are quite large. And they say, you know, they'll let the water out gradually. I would like to know from Ed whether the consultants or the environmental health have checked the banks of the Withy Brook when it gets down into Withycombe, because a couple of years ago, a lot of the bank fell in, and it doesn't look very stable when I was down there the other day. And I'm just a bit worried with climate change, with a lot of rain, once the buildings are up at Goodmore's Farm, that the holding tanks won't be able to hold all the water. And we're going to get surges going across and down into Withy Brook. And I don't know if anyone is addressing that before it happens, or are we going to wait till the bank collapses and half the houses disappear? I find it a bit worrying that the damage that was previously done, no one seems to have addressed it or repaired it. And we're just waiting for the next onshore of flooding. So if Ed could point me in the right direction, I'd be very grateful, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. What I'm going to do is just ask Alistair to make his comments, and then we'll come back to Ed and Jeff Young and Paul Arnott as well, Councillor Arnott, because it does seem it's very difficult to pin down who's responsible for what. Over to you, Alistair.
Thank you, Chair. And given that I may have to depart shortly, would you allow me to cover the two elements that we're basically talking about tonight briefly?
Yeah, briefly.
Thank you, Chair. I read Councillor Young's report, and useful as it is, I think in many ways it tells us what we already know. My concern is the word liaise. If I might give you an example, back east when I was in Thanet District Council, we had a similar situation, both with surface runoff and combined sewage going into outfalls, at a time when Southern Water were trying to put in an increased system with their coastal works. And we found that we had to, through various mechanisms, actually, instead of liaising with them, we ended up having to force them to a situation where they not only put in tertiary treatment to a plant, which was only going to have secondary, but also we managed to increase the capacity of the holding tank they were going to build into the cliff face by an extra third. This bought us a bit of extra time when it came to the kind of weather that we're now experiencing here. So we found that basically they were swamping us with facts and figures and drowning out some of the detail. For instance, they were not prepared to give us any indication as to their actual capacity when it came to the holding tanks around the coastline that we were in charge of. And I suspect, I get this feeling that South West Water are doing the same to us here. So that's a question that I think Ed and his team really needs to kind of bear down on, because they will drown us with facts and figures. And as Ed said, he's no expert. I'm no expert either, particularly. I have been involved with the EA over the years, and in fact, just out of interest, when we were talking about water in our rivers, I did a survey over 10 years ago, which showed that the upstream from the sea was 2 miles further inland than had been previously suggested. So we all need to be aware of the climate change that's coming at us because of the number of rivers that we have on our coastline. And that's a modelling exercise that was done. So really, I would like to see some kind of bearing down on the information that's coming in from South West Water, because as I say, I see history repeating itself here. And I'd really like Ed, if he could, to perhaps give an answer to Councillor Skinner's question about when it comes to planning and refusal on the grounds of capacity issues. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Just one quick question, Alistair, before you leave. What did Thanet do to actually force Southeast Water to comply and put in better facilities?
We ended up forcing them to judicial review, as far as I can recall. But I can certainly dig back and contact some of my old colleagues to find out maybe the route map that we used to actually get them into that situation. I do recall there was an awful lot of public participation, because just as we found here, a merest hint of rain and they're shutting beaches off for bathing. Same thing was happening back east. And of course, the local businesses were struggling and finding that for a whole day, sometimes a week, they were unable to function. And of course, small businesses are under huge pressure today in the same way. And so I think a lot of public pressure was brought to bear as well, but I can certainly dig back and find out. It was quite a time ago, but I think some of the old members are still around.
Sounds helpful. Okay, well, we're here to be constructive and helpful. At present, we seem to be going through a bit of an educational process, but I would appreciate anything from Ed or Jeff. And we really do need to take into account the second issue in beach and river water quality. So do you want to comment, Ed, on the things that you've heard so far? And maybe after Jeff's had a comment, then we could also look at the beach and river water quality issue and then come to a set of recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So if I go back to, I think it's Councillor Skinner's comment about refusing applications even if South West Water are comfortable with the impacts on their network. I mean, any advice we're given by South West Water is simply advice. The council is the local planning authority. It is the decision-making body. It can make decisions as it sees fit. What I would say, though, is decisions need to be evidence-based fundamentally. So if we don't have evidence from South West Water that there's going to be a detrimental impact on the sewage network that can't be overcome, then I would suggest we need to get consultants to investigate that and challenge that assumption and help us to understand that. And if necessary, advise us to the contrary. Otherwise, we would go to appeal and our reason for refusal would not stack up and be found sound. But you know, there's that option if members have concerns about the advice we've been given by South West Water to go out and commission consultants to investigate those issues further and advise us. And I think this links into some other points that were raised about challenging South West Water's information and guidance. I hope the water cycle study will do that. And that our consultants will be able to challenge South West Water and give us the comfort of understanding what South West Water are saying and of an independent set of eyes to oversee all of that and advise us. So I hope that will help to negate those issues. But in direct answer to Councillor Skinner's question, yes, of course we can make those decisions, but we need to make sure that our decisions are informed and robust. And to do that, I think we would need to get further independent advice on the particular circumstances of that case to do that. Just moving through the other comments, I mean, I agree with Councillor Young. A lot of the issue arises because of historic drainage infrastructure that was combined foul and surface water drainage. What I would say in terms of that and some of the comments Councillor Chapman was making is modern new developments should have sustainable drainage systems within them. That has been a requirement of our policy throughout this local plan and will be in the next local plan. And those should ensure that surface water in the event of a storm is stored on site in various forms, whether that's through swales, through surface water attenuation features on the site, whether above or below ground, to ensure that surface water can be stored on site and only discharged from the site when the storm event has passed. Such to ensure that discharge rates do not exceed greenfield levels. And so as long as we're doing that through the planning process, and that's obviously our intention, and we consult with officers at Devon County Council who are expert in the design of these schemes to advise us on these issues, then there should be no greater impact on the wider infrastructure from new developments as when they're greenfields fundamentally. So we shouldn't be contributing to those issues in terms of surface water moving forward. The issue is more moving forward with developments, as Councillor Young said, in terms of the foul and ensuring that there's sufficient capacity to do that. But it's these historic issues that somehow need to be addressed, and that's where South West Water need to well, we need to be liaising with them and understanding and addressing those issues. In terms of Councillor Chapman's other question, I don't know who's responsible for the banks of the Withy Brook or what works have been carried out to them. As I say, from our point of view, because developments shouldn't be discharging more surface water than pre-development rates, there shouldn't be any greater impact. So that doesn't become such an issue for us from a planning perspective. I hope that's helpful. I think hopefully that answers the points raised. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thanks ever so much, Ed. Over to you, Jeff. Your hand's raised. Please come in.
Yeah, just extending on what Ed has just said. I'm taking quite a lot of interest in Goodmoors Farm because my daughter lives downstream on the Withy Brook, and her garden backs onto the Withy Brook, so I'm keeping a beady eye on that. The attenuation at Goodmore's Farm is by ponds, and you can see them being constructed at the moment. Massive big ponds. And as Ed says, the outflow from the site has to be equal to the greenfield sites. I feel that sometimes we should be asking for more than equal to, because we know that the Withy Brook has flooded downstream, and it would be nice to have a betterment rather than equal to. But I don't think we can force that on a developer, unfortunately. The Withy Brook is responsibility by the Environment Agency, because it's there is flood schemes on it, so EA take responsibility for it. Basically, main rivers are responsibility of the Environment Agency, and any other watercourse is responsibility in this county of Devon County Council flood team, plus the riparian owners, which is an archaic 200-year-old law that if you your property backs onto the bank of a river, you're responsible for half the river, and the person on the other side of the river is responsible for the other side. The system doesn't work. No one follows it. If one person follows it and the next person upstream doesn't, we've got problems. I would love to see that law changed, but I do know that the Environment Agency are looking at some further work on the Withy Brook to improve the or reduce the flooding on that river. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We're perhaps better moving on to section 9, and then coming back to a recommendation of where we go with South West Water, or for that matter, for the Environment Agency and others. Everybody happy with that? Well, the odd yawn does help.
Chair, can I suggest that you just combine items 8 and 9?
Yeah, that's what I was moving to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, only had the officer report for 9.
Yeah, we'll put that in the officer report. And so, in terms of discussing the beach and river quality issue, who was reporting on that? Sally Webster. Is Sally there, please?
Yes, Chair. So, nobody was available, I'm afraid. So Councillor Young's in the meeting, and was aware that there would be no officer present, I think.
Of course, I remember. Yeah. So really, Jeff, it is your party right now. You need to unmute yourself, though.
Yeah. I take it everyone has read the report. This report was requested, and it basically explains how the bathing water regulations operate and what our responsibilities are. Basically, we are just the mouthpiece for South West Water when there's a discharge of foul water or sewage into our watercourses that goes close to our beaches, and then we are basically a mouthpiece for Environment Agency when there's a pollution forecast. Now, pollution forecasts are based on predictions from the Met Office and from the Environment Agency. that if that amount of rain falls, then there's going to be some outfall discharges, and there's also going to be substantial runoff from rivers. In the case of Exmouth, you've got to consider the whole catchment of the Ex, which is tremendous. So if there's a tremendous storm over most of Devon and Exmoor, then that could continue for about 2 days. If it's a downpour just on the Pebblebed Heaths, then that would that there's any discharge would disappear within possibly 24 hours. So it depends on which river and where the rain is expected to fall. A lot of people mix the two up. The southwest, the surface against sewage, they take the figures from Southwest Water of the discharges, and they add another 48 hours onto the danger time. So that is why their system of warning of people is larger than what we have from Southwest Water. Any questions?
Fine. Let's go first of all to Councillor Skinner.
And thank you. And I'm looking at this report in full, and I've kind of, because I've sort of giggled at myself really. So perhaps Councillor Young, as you seem to be in the chair of being the expert, you might be able to answer this for me. So in the report in full, where it says the samples are taken, you've got Exmouth, and the report says it's excellent. Then it says Sandy Bay, privately owned, and it says good. Then it says Budleigh Salton, and it's excellent. Well, last time I looked, I think Sandy Bay was in between Exmouth and Budleigh Salton. Then you look at Budleigh Salton, which is excellent. Ladram Bay says privately owned, and it's good. And then it says Sidmouth Town, excellent. Well, Ladram Bay is between Budleigh Salton and Sidmouth Town. Now, working on the basis of water, knowing that it's really quite large volumes of water, what is the difference between excellent and good? And is it not, what is it that they both, those are privately owned, the good ones, and they're not excellent? So how does that work? Because they're in an outfall at Ladram Bay, for example. There is a Budleigh Salton, the river falls out of there, and almost the same for Sandy Bay. So that just interests me, something like that, because I wonder why that comes about.
Funny you should say that.
Sorry?
Funny you should say that.
Would you like to explain?
I haven't had the experts explain it to me, but I do know that there's a discharge pipe that is off the firing range at Exmouth. And there's also a discharge on the opposite side of the Otter River. You've got that little headland there, and there's a discharge the other side of that. And the currents generally go west to east. So those two discharges are closest to Sandy Bay and closest to Ladram Bay. But it could be other reasons as well. I'd like to get an expert to answer that for you, and I'll be asking that question to Southwest Water. One thing that I have learned in the last couple of weeks is that the rig that's off the firing range at the moment at Exmouth is Southwest Waters, and they're doing a geology study to understand the seabed to put in a new discharge in that location, which should improve the situation in Exmouth even further. The other thing to remember is that 40 years ago, 25% of the beaches were safe to swim in, and now it's 95% of our beaches. So it's a hell of an increase. So we've come a long way, but it's just that this final push that we need.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Whibley.
Thank you, Chair. Jeff, I'm not going to put you on the spot about technical issues and stuff, but you say that when it comes to distributing the information that we get given from South West Water and the Environment Agency, that it's us that delivers that information. I still see, like I do in a lot of things, people blaming the council for a thing that we have no control over and no power. Is it a statutory duty that we have to release that, or is that not something that they can do?
I'm not quite sure if it's a statutory duty or we do it because the blue flag regulations, and the information is those signs that you've got on the beach that says that is in operation, and then we have to then inform the lifeguards and inform the public that it's not safe for swimming, and that is a environmental health issue. And that's the only. No, I see John Golding's nodding his head.
Do we put in those things we're acting on advice from South West Water? And because if we did that, people may go, well, it's not the council, they're just telling us. But I don't know. Everything council's fault for the time.
And we only have to put these notices out during the swimming season.
Right.
We're not informed during the winter, and we're now in the winter. And I realise that now there's a lot of people that still swim in the sea. Certainly I wouldn't go in the sea at this time of year, but people do. And there's a lobby at the moment to see if we can extend it all the year. But that means more work for our hard pushed beach safety manager, who is running around all the time, putting up notices, taking down notices, putting flags up, taking flags down. Now it's we're thinking of coming up with some other solution for next year. One solution that that we're doing this year is we're going to be putting on a QR code on all our notice boards on the beaches, all the those large signs. And that QR code will link it to the Safe Beaches website straight away. So if you want to go for a swim in the winter, take your phone, use the QR code, and then you find out how safe that beach is at that particular time.
Okay, thank you very much. I did see somebody else, Alistair, you wanted to talk to the issue. Alistair Bruce.
I think his connection must
have cut. Breaking communication, isn't it? Yeah. You're all back. Okay. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I hear deja vu again. Can you hear me? You've all frozen.
Yeah, we can hear you and see you. Carry on.
Oh dear. I hope this is going to carry on working. You're all over with all this stuff coming out of, with regards to Jeff, he's got Councillor Young, he's got a difficult situation on his hands with the water company. Extending sea outfalls to push sewage further out to the sea is really just not the answer at all. We need to increase capacity inland to deal with that. That's something that really sort of gets my goat, to be honest with you. Yeah, I am one of those people that swim all year round. So yes, I know it's extra work for the officers, but I would really like to see some extra signage going up through the winter. I think if you visit Sidmouth on average weekday, there is most days, and it might be worth putting a recommendation forward to adopt the surface timescale when it comes to reported sewage leaks. I know it's an extra length of time and it will have an impact on businesses, although obviously after season that is less so. So that is a consideration when I'm proposing this. But I think from the point of view of a health situation, I consider that as an adopted point for the timescales when the beaches are closed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. John Golding, I'm sure you can make some sense out of this complicated situation, so please come on forward.
Thank you, Chair. I've just had a couple of things. Jeff's got a really good handle on this. He takes a keen interest in it. In terms of, is it a statutory duty? Yes, it is. We've got a duty under the report mentions it under the bathing water regulations to notify the public of the information that the Environment Agency, so this is Environment Agency data based on their weekly sampling during that sort of summer period, that, as Jeff says, our beach safety officer charges around and puts notices up if there's an alert on our beaches. I think there is a case for water quality being a yearly thing. At the moment it's not, but we do know there's been a massive increase in wild swimming, sea swimming, and it is all year round. But we only have the data that the Environment Agency supplies us from that May to September period. So we may wish to approach them for wider sampling, wider information that covers all year. We could raise that with them and see if they're able or prepared to sample all year round, in which case we can then put notices up all year round when the water quality isn't as good as we would wish. We do have excellent water quality, and I think Jeff explained as best we can why the Ladram and Sandy Bay water quality is not as high as on the beaches, in fact the other beaches we own. But again, it's not our data, it's the Environment Agency supplied data that they interpret and they use, and maybe again better visibility of that data would be helpful to us. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Now, we do know we're meeting with South West Water on the 2nd of November to discuss the beach and river quality issues. And then I can't remember, Sarah, if you could just remind me what we've set up with South West Water for the planning issues.
The planning meeting will be on the 3rd of November, so they're on consecutive days. Right.
So really what we're in is a situation that we need as a council, and certainly as a scrutiny committee, to put forward recommendations as to how we proceed from here. I've got to say, it's a complex issue between Devon County Environment Agency, South West Water and ourselves. And I don't know, John and Ed, whether you've got any way in which we can come through with some form of clear briefing on the issues, because I think it would help scrutiny when it reaches November's meetings to know what those responsibilities are and what the issues are. Would that be possible?
Yeah, I think the report you got from Sally Webster, our Principal Environmental Health Officer, identifies broadly the responsibilities for beach and private water supplies she covers, and rivers. And certainly the Environment Agency are responsible for bathing water quality and river quality. So I think there's perhaps a different debate to have with the Environment Agency than there is to have with South West Water.
Okay, that sounds very sensible. As usual, John, thank you. Anybody wish to pick up with the proposals? Jamie, you were going to bring something forward.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, looking at Councillor Young's proposals, I mean, it's really difficult, and part of this frustrates me immensely. We know as a council, we have only got a limited amount we can do with, for example, South West Water. And to that point, I sometimes get very frustrated as in to what the Scrutiny Committee can actually do. We have meetings with South West Water. What can we actually do with it? You know, we should be looking at what we should be scrutinising the council, not South West Water. Councillor Young's proposals, you know, for the district council to liaise with the local groups, river trusts, and, you know, get this citizen science monitoring up and running, I think is really, really good. Liaising with landowners and farmers, you know, at the end of the day, how much surface water comes off of farmland? And we don't know what's going into some of this farmland. And then work with South West Water. And I think the key word is work with. You know, it's in the news every single day, all South West Water, all the water companies, all they're terrible, they're making millions of pounds and they're not doing anything and they're just pumping sewage into our seas. We need to be working with them. And I think it's really important that we're seen as a council to be doing something that we can actually do, rather than having meetings and discussing stuff that actually we can't do anything about. So, you know, the proposals from Councillor Young, I would like to propose them on his behalf, because I think they're really important that we can be seen to be doing something.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'm just, first of all, want to clarify one thing. Scrutiny has the legal responsibility and the right to scrutinise outside partners, such as South West Water. So we do have the opportunity to critique them, bring them in front of us, and to encourage them to do things. We can also do that, obviously, through council officers and portfolio holders. What I'm wanting to do is to, first of all, see if there's a seconder for your motion. And
I'll second it.
Thank you. I thought you might, Eleanor.
But I would like
Thank
to
you
speak
very
to
much.
it.
And so we can then move on forward. So to go for the normal route, please, Councillor Skinner.
Thank you. And I just want to bring up what Councillor Kent was saying, because he was saying that not much we can do, and then we ought to be working with them, and they didn't see the relevance of having meetings. Well, having meetings is the whole point of trying to work with them, I would have thought. I actually think it's very good in what you're trying to achieve through the Scrutiny Committee, because actually no other committee seems to be doing it, Chair. And it's your function and it's your role, and I sort of understand that. And I think the more that we do have South West Water coming to speak to us, and perhaps the Environment Agency and the like, the more we get as members to understand, because the issues that are happening here from a scrutiny perspective actually flow into strategic planning. They flow into planning, the planning committee meetings as well. And the more knowledge that members can gain through this particular process, I think is helpful for members to gain that. And I think along with the officers in the knowledge that they're gaining as well, I think everybody, it's like a school day, it's a learning day. So for me, I think the function of this authority through the Scrutiny Committee in doing what it's doing is excellent. And I think the more we can talk to people, and I do agree with Councillor Kemp, he's exactly right. We do need to be talking with these people and see them as partners. They're not the enemy, they're partners. And what we need to understand is what the issues that South West Water and the Environment Agency are confronting, because those issues, what's happening to them, affect the outcomes of some of the decisions that we're going to make. And the more we know and get to understand that, the better. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Eleanor, you wanted to speak, and then I'll come to Councillor Bailey.
Was that me, Chair?
That was Councillor Rylance, yes.
Yes, sorry, you broke up. I think my signal's not good, so I'm going to stay off camera if that's okay. So I just wanted to say in support of Councillor Young's report that we have limited resources. We can't be everywhere, but we all want the same thing, and that same thing is clean water. We want clean bathing water. We want clean rivers so that animals thrive. We want well, I mean, the drinking water is not so much of a problem unless people are drinking groundwater. But you know, we want a clean environment and we want clean water. We can't be everywhere all the time, dipping streams and dipping rivers. And like with potholes, where we're asking members of the public to report potholes that need fixing, I see the project of equipping citizen activists with kits to dip their nearest river as being a very, very good solution to provide early warning where something might be going wrong. And we know from the meeting that we had in October with the South West Water representative that there are people out there who are phenomenally interested in this and would be only too keen to help and provide extra information. And I see this as a really positive way in which we can work with interested members of the public. And obviously, it would not be necessarily scientifically rigorous. I say necessarily because some of the people who would be doing it would be probably scientists. But obviously it wouldn't be scientifically necessarily very rigorous, but it would give us early warning of problems arising and where there's consistent problems, and allow us to actually tackle them with minimal resource investment, I would venture to say. In terms of the item 2, which is liaising with landowners and farmers, I would like to point out that in the west of the district, we have a major landowner called the National Trust, which is already doing a lot of environmental stuff and would be an amazing partner. Once you can get hold of them, they are very, very solid partners to work with. And I know they're doing a lot of things over at this end of the district. So I would like to commend this report that Councillor Young has provided, and I obviously second it as I did earlier, and ask you all to vote for it, because I think we could achieve a lot with a very small amount of resources by doing it this way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rylance. Councillor Bailey, please. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Henry, do you have any particular legal reason that you want to talk? Okay, I better just take that if you don't mind hanging on. Yes.
I'm quite happy for Councillor Bailey to go if you are, Chair, as long as I get to talk before you go to the vote, please.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, you are on again, Councillor Bailey.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry I was a bit late. I think that one of the things that is really important is that we talk to South West Water about how they share their information. And I don't know whether we can add this to Councillor Young's report or his proposals, because, for instance, it's unacceptable in my view that when we want to find out about sewage discharges into the rivers, we have to do FOIs. So, for example, I've done an FOI for sewage discharges in the River Otter in 2020, and I haven't had a response within the statutory period. So I think this is the kind of information that should be freely, readily available, uploaded in real time, so that we can all see actually what's happening, because that's part of being accountable. So I'd like to see that included in a proposal that we request, we request that South West Water provide their data on their website in real time, so that we can actually see what's going into our rivers and when it's going into our rivers. And I do take on board Councillor Young's point about bathing water having improved, but South West Water's environmental performance is absolutely dismal, and I've been talking about that today in Devon County Council. And you performed really badly in 2022. So I think, whilst yes, South West Water are partners, we need to be really clear about how we're going to try and influence and deliver improvements for residents. And I'm all for citizen science, and I think plays a really important role. But I think we also need to think about South West Water and what they can do. And I think providing clearer information in real time, so we don't have to waste our time doing FOIs, is an important thing, because also then we can compare with what happened last year. It's actually really quite difficult to find out kind of up-to-date information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Henry, perhaps you'd like to comment now?
Thank you, Chair. So firstly, with the motion that's on the table, that's going to have to be recommendations to Cabinet. So Scrutiny doesn't have the right to decide that for itself. It effectively has to make a recommendation somewhere. So Cabinet's is the logical place there, given what's effectively being asked. The other thing I'll comment is that, of course, that's only been circulated, I think it was this morning, and of course there's not been any officer assessment in terms of what is requested. So in essence, I'd give it a caveat to say that as far as the advice to Cabinet will be concerned, if that is ultimately the recommendation tonight, is that it's going to have to be subject to some assessment. I don't believe any of the officers have had any input into those recommendations or assessed the resourcing, likely outcomes or anything like that. So while it's permissible for Scrutiny to make the recommendation, it's something that Cabinet will have to have regard to, and whether or not it will require a further report in terms of putting those in play.
Yes, I would like to just make a modification to the proposal, and I don't mean to wreck it. I simply want to take on board what Henry was recommending and suggest that this should be scoped and presented to Cabinet as a recommendation from Scrutiny. Is that acceptable to the proposers?
Chair, please could you ask if mine could be added in as well?
I would second that.
I was going to come to that. Yes, I want very much to include within points 1 and 2 that we need timely information, and obviously that's a recommendation that could go also for Cabinet, and particularly John Golding, to negotiate.
Sorry, Chair, is this your recommendation? Sorry, Henry.
So Councillor Kemp and Councillor Ryan effectively just need to say yes, they're happy for Councillor Bailey's to be added to the 3 that are already there. So I think that's okay. And really, as far as the recommendation to Cabinet, I mean, your options are recommendation to Cabinet or recommendation to Council. But so that's not really necessarily that they need agreement. It's just to note that it's going to have to go somewhere, and, yes. and Cabinet is the right place for it to go, given what is being proposed. So it's really more just to note that that's where it'll have to go.
Yeah, I'm happy with those.
Yes, I'm happy.
Fine. Then we send it for scoping for Cabinet, for a report at Cabinet along the lines of this proposal. All those in favour? Sorry, I need somebody to take us through the voting.
Yes, Chair, so voting is underway. There are 8 green ticks in favour, none against and no abstentions.
Excellent. Thank you ever so much. Right. What I'll do is just quickly whiz through a presentation about the rural issues and then call a quick break, because we have been going for quite some time. That will give the opportunity for anybody who wants to leave from the officer side, and then we'll carry on focusing on the economic development report by the portfolio holder.
Thank you. With your agreement, I have to leave at 7:30, unfortunately. So I'll stay as long as I can. Obviously, you have my written report. I know through yourself and officers, I did ask whether the agenda could be reordered simply because of my attendance and need to go away tonight with a family commitment. But I will stay as long as I can, Chair. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Councillor Hayward, that request didn't get through to me. Otherwise, we would have been delighted to have accommodated your particular request. So all I could do is apologise that I didn't hear. And what I suggest...
I'll stay as long as I can, Chair, evidently, to try and assist. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll do very quickly, if I may. I'll go through the situation on the rural front.
Chair, is it worth taking Councillor Hayward's report now whilst he's still here and seeing how far you can get? Because I think the risk is that in short space of time he'll be gone and then you won't be able to debate it at all with him present.
I'll just say one thing then and come back to the rural issue. Some 60% of our business and 70% of our population are in the rural areas, and I did ask for recommendations on a rural policy, but I was told that officers were too overloaded to present one, which is why I have intended to just make some comments. What I would like to suggest is that the excellent report which has come forward for economic development, we need really to listen to as much as possible from Councillor Hayward. So we'll just hang on and cross our legs while Councillor Hayward goes forward and makes his report. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Well, you have the report in front of you, and I'm very grateful to my officers for helping me put this together. And you know, they are an outstanding team across a wide range of areas, and I'm very grateful and you know, to have them on side, as should be the council. Really, I mean, you've got the report here. It would be, I think, a waste of your time and my time because everyone's had the report and read it. It's been a very challenging year. Obviously, that's the first report I've submitted to scrutiny, and it has been an incredibly challenging year. Yeah, there is always a temptation, and we're all in this together to be political. The comings and goings from Westminster and the timelines that we're often given to work to are extremely challenging, whoever sits in this seat. Again, I applaud the diligence and patience of officers from these deadlines, which are sometimes, you know, weeks, 2 weeks to come together and put something together. If we don't submit these bids, we don't submit these reports, then we're damned because we're found to be negligent. If we do expend huge amounts of officer resource and councillor resource, cross-party, to come together to do these things, and then we're unsuccessful, it's disheartening, but that's the game we play. You know, district council is a mere player in this game of chess in the UK. So we do the best we can. And you'll see from the report, it's a very challenging economic time. You know, our high streets are suffering. Members of our working population are suffering. You, I know, Councillor Allen, are a champion for you know, those who are disabled, those who are young, those who are old. But we all share your concerns. They're areas that need to be worked upon. And with an ever-changing economic position, and then things completely out of our control, energy costs, fuel costs, food costs, they wreak havoc across our economy. And we're all seeing in our community shops closing that really should have been able to weather the storm, but they can't. They simply can't. And the whole high street is changing. And we must flex with it, give support where we can, try and find opportunities for funding to help those who are most challenged, most at risk of being left behind. And it's not a time for sound bites for, you know, various things. You know, we've had levelling up, and I believe I saw today that our local MP is now a PPS to the Levelling Up Department. Well, congratulations to Mr. Jupp MP. I hope he's very successful in bringing levelling up and making it happen across the UK, not just in East Devon, although of course we'd very much welcome levelling up here on both sides of the district. But I mean, you know, we should take a great pleasure is not the right word. We should take satisfaction in what we've been able to deliver as a district council. You know, the various panels, IRF, all the ARG awards, shared prosperity. The list just goes on, and it shows that actually when councillors work together, we achieve so much. We really do, and it's not waxing lyrical, we do. We achieve far more working together as a united council to try and deliver for the people of East Devon. And for me, it's been a sharp learning curve. And I know Councillor Skinner did this job before. And I'm grateful actually to Councillor Skinner for some of the advice he's given me over my 3 years. You know, doing this during COVID has been a challenge. But I'm grateful to everyone who's stepped up and given me advice and support. I welcome that, genuinely meant. But we are where we are. It's a bit of a hackneyed phrase. And I think we've given as much support as we can. Of course, there's more we can do. There's more, but there are limits. A lot of what we aspire and aim to do needs cold, hard cash. And all councils are constrained, certainly district councils, to a greater extent the county council, because our money is being used elsewhere. But we do what we can. So again, I won't run through it line by line, Chair. Everyone's, I'm sure, had the opportunity to read it. I hope it was informative. I hope it was of interest and helped outline the past year and the path of direction going forwards. And I'm more than welcome. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that I can. And of course, if I can't answer the question directly here because I don't have the information directly to hand, I'll be delighted to take those questions and give a written answer if that helps. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for what I consider to be a very detailed report of probably the most harassing period of economics that I've ever been involved in. And I don't envy you, Councillor Hayward, getting through all of those situations. We're not here to tear you apart. We never want to do that in this committee. What we want is a constructive, helpful set of suggestions. So on that note, over to Councillor Skinner for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, Councillor Hayward, with the COVID is something none of us have ever faced before, whether it be me or my predecessors or anybody else in the role that I played when I was there. It's been a very challenging time, and the local authority and what we've been able to do, I think, has been exemplary in what central government sent down for help for lots of businesses, and then we as a local authority getting that funding out to those people, which is absolutely vital at a time when they need it the most. But there is some things, of course, that is within our gift to be able to see that we can improve on our economic rise in ability for success in the businesses, and that is through the planning process. And you will know as well as I know, certainly when I played the role, planning was a big part of businesses. Many businesses needed to expand in whichever way they want to do. We've got a wide varying district from Axminster right down to Exmouth, and covering seaside towns along with rural farming areas as well, and quite the economic hub that works around Exeter and the edge of Exeter. So what I'd like to say to a question to yourself, Councillor Hayward, is what I used to do was go out and see as many businesses as I could, and different types of businesses in different ways. And no doubt you've probably done as well as you can. And I know over the COVID, you can't exactly go out to businesses and see people, but hence since then that has sort of come to a pass. Out of these sort of, if you go out and see businesses, can I ask you what you're finding out is the biggest sort of rift that businesses are finding today from your own knowledge in playing your role in what you do? What's the sort of general sort of issues that they have that from a district council position we can help those people?
Well, I mean, you know yourself, so I have a full-time job here in Axminster. So actually getting out during the day is more problematic, but at weekends and whenever I have a day off, and actually when I'm out in council business, I try and nip into any business and shop. And I've been very grateful to officers who've sort of put me in front of various businesses, and I've gone to open warehouses and factories and shops, etc. And so I try and talk as much as I can, because, you know, we all gain benefit from talking to those who actually are living this experience. You know, as councillors, we're not inured from it, but our our role is slightly different. When you're actually living and breathing, trying to keep a business open, you're a businessman, Councillor Skinner. I've run my own business. It's a hard graft, and that's in good economic times. In bad economic times, it can be cataclysmic and the slightest thing. And you know, there are things, and I'm grateful, and I'm going to come out and say it, that Libby Jarrett's team, you know, is working wonders, helping businesses look at their domestic, non-domestic business rates situation. At the moment, we know there's a huge backlog at the valuation office, and that is having profound effects on businesses. You know, there are hundreds of valuation letters going out, and yet when you try and sort of send a message back the other way, they're saying, well, it could be 18 months, 24 months before we unpick this. In the meantime, we'd like you to pay this. And Libby, I know, is arranging some localised forums to educate and give people a guide and a steer as to how they navigate this crazy situation. The valuation office are underfunded; they don't have enough staff. So there's that. There is the uncertainty, just the general uncertainty. I mean, there was 2 shops in Axminster, and I pick on Axminster because I talked to them, closed recently. And again, they should have been able to weather some ups and downs in the market, but they just can't. And it's the uncertainty of knowing, are we going to be able to exist another week? And they are things that actually the district council can't change because they're people's shopping habits. People are scared, the public are scared, spenders are scared. That fear manifests itself in lack of footfall. It's not footfall's fine. It's nothing, you know, COVID, whilst it's still there, we can't move away from that issue. Actually, people have come back to the high street, but now they've got less money, they've got less confidence. They're thinking, should I just keep the money in the bank for a rainy day to pay my gas bill? So they're not spending as much as they did. That manifests itself in tills ringing or not ringing. That manifests itself in lack of turnover. Businesses go to the wall. And that's the same from here all the way to Cranbrook down to Exmouth. Then I suppose the other thing that impacts is staffing. You know, there is a lack of staff. Staff are, it's a bit of a seller's market. We have this constant thing that actually, if you want to improve yourself, you need to task up, you need to train up, get a better job. But actually, that then leaves a void. Who's going to do those jobs that are left behind? That, again, is something the district council can't impact. Perhaps our working population have decided they don't want to be exploited and underpaid and undervalued anymore, so that they are voting with their feet. They're going to the best employers. Now, that's not aimed as a criticism of anyone who's lost staff. It can happen for a variety of reasons, but people do generally walk with their feet, especially when they've got their own bills to pay. An extra £1 an hour can make a huge difference. And smaller businesses already struggling with profitability can't compete. So again, they lose these trained staff, experienced staff. Recruitment is a long time consuming and expensive process that ultimately can end in failure. So there is, Councillor Skinner, I think a lot of fear, a lot of worry, and we can help as councillors try and provide some reassurance, but ultimately that comes from higher up. So we as a council can just keep trying to do what we can, offer reassurance, but some of the fixes we need as a council are not within our gift, I'm afraid. And at that, it's probably appropriate for me to say no more, because it could well veer into another area. But thank you.
Yeah, we're trying to avoid political problems. Councillor Parr, you wanted to chip in.
Well, I want to ask a question, please, about the asset register. And where is it, and is it up to date, and how can I see it? What's happening about it? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's a very easy question to ask, or question to answer. The asset register exists. The primary one has a couple of hundred fields in it because it's an intensive bit of data. So if Councillor Parr would like to ask me a particular question about a particular asset, I'll be delighted with officers' help to provide it. But it's one of those classic examples, and I, as a clerk, have asked for information and have been provided with some information, other it's just too complex. And it's not being belittling anyone. There is simply too much information in one spreadsheet to navigate. And it's a question of what, if you then ask officers, well, please redact it, take out this column and that column, that actually affects the outcome of the data. So on that, I'd be delighted if Councillor Parr would like to write to me, Chair, with any particulars she would like. I'll liaise with Tim and his team and be delighted to outline any assets and details of assets down to the minutiae of that asset, because all the data is there, and Tim and his team have spent a lot of time collating it. But you can imagine with a district council of our size, with everything from land assets, building assets, all the way down to street furniture, it is a gargantuan document. And I don't think just saying, oh, everyone have willy-nilly access, we want to be transparent, want to be open, but actually it's too much data to yield. But on particular cases, Councillor Parr, I will immediately respond to any information that you request. Thank you.
Really, what I wanted to know was the meaning of the sentence there on page 13, which says members need to have greater access to an up-to-date asset register comprising key data. And I thought you were going to tell us that you're sorting it out so that it will be in usable format, so that we don't have to go through anyone else. We can go to that asset register, and I can see Tim is there. Perhaps he can help on this. But it would be so that members can go and look up what they want to. I thought this is what the aim was.
May I respond, Chair? I'll be delighted, obviously, if Tim would
briefly.
I suppose on that is, what some members consider access that would yield all the information they want to others wouldn't be enough. For some, seeing all 500, let's say, columns would be fascinating. For others, they just simply want to know, what do we own? Where is it? So it really is horses for courses. What you perceive as to be comprehensive data, others would consider not enough, others would consider too much. Tim, Chair, through with your agreement, might I bring Mr. Childs in?
Yes, and I've got a question for you, so don't run off. Tim.
Thank you, Chair. A slimmed down version of the asset register. So as Councillor Hayward has said, the asset register in effect is all of our data relating to our assets, which runs into many, many hundreds of fields. What we are doing, however, and this is a live piece of work being worked on by Strata this very month, is pulling together a version of the asset register containing the pertinent fields that will be accessible to both members and the public, accessed through our website. And that is being worked on actively. And this is, sorry, just to clarify, this is for land and building assets at this stage, but that will be accessed through our website for members and the public. And I'm hoping to be able to report back to the next AMF meeting in November, either with confirmation that's now been completed and here's a demo of what it looks like, or with a progress update to then do the demo at the following AMF. But as I said, the work is being undertaken this very month.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much. So just before you go, if I may, Paul, I'm very concerned that we get the right information from economic development into our local plan, because the two things interact, and there is no present information about the land that and the development of sites for business, or what policies we ought to have with regard to the development of future businesses. So I'm just wondering how you're liaising with the local plan as a group, as a team.
Thank you. Well, I mean, obviously, I sit on strategic planning, as you know, so I sort of track that through. I think it'd be wrong to say that SMT are a cohesive unit, and of course, the economic development team will talk to the planning team. They talk to each other, and it would be wrong of them not to liaise and share each other's data and contribute to each other's plans. I don't really know what else to say. I mean, it's one of these things that just happens. And Andy?
Andy, perhaps you could give us some illustration, or Ed, you could explain exactly what this interaction is happening, because it's desperately important.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So there is very close working with the planning team around two key topics, I would suggest. One is around the evidence base and the economic development needs assessment being foremost within that. And the second is around detailed policy and proposal drafting. We've worked closely with the local plans team in terms of how those policies have moved forward, obviously learning from the experience and the evidence that we're able to contribute as well. So that is I would say, a productive relationship, and it will come through the course through Strategic Planning Committee during the course of this month.
Yes, I just wondered how far you were along that route.
Perhaps I can help, Chair. I mean, there's been a whole series of workshop sessions and meetings between the planning policy team and the economic development team, who have worked jointly on the economic chapter within the local plan and the drafting of the policies. So what you have before Strategic Planning Committee tomorrow is a draft of that economic development chapter in the local plan, which has been worked on jointly by both teams, and also a number of allocations of employment sites that are coming forward at this stage, both within the Growth Point area and around the district, within the towns. There's a mixture of standalone employment site allocations and mixed use sites as well. So the sort of first fruits of that partnership and that work are available for members to review tomorrow at Strategic Planning Committee, and look forward to hearing their feedback.
That'd be good. Excellent. Councillor Skinner.
Well, I suppose you've actually touched on some of what I was going to say, because I actually wanted to morph into a little bit one of the issues that I've got very much within my patch, and I'll say this to Councillor Hayward and his team members, and that is the issue that I've got, of course, is food versus the sort of green energy process, because I've got 600 acres, probably more than 600 acres coming here and just around me, between solar panels and all the rest of it. And it's one of those issues that we have to take on as an authority collectively, between the constraints against losing farmland, against trying to deliver the green agenda. And that issue, and I did actually see, I only just saw it, that I was going to say all this, and I see that actually, Chair, you want to bring forward a debate about that issue on its own. So perhaps this is not the place to do it, but I will raise it just here as a sort of, let's call it a prologue into where we're going, because the real issue we have, and you've got here economic geography, and I've read this little bit about whether or not we have a real strategy for the economic development. And one of the questions that's asked here, and I don't know whether Andy, whether you wrote this one up or one of the other guys, but is there a need for a strategy of this kind at all? Based again, but with the backdrop of obviously whether or not it's a separate document compared to the economic document that we already have. And from my perspective, I sort of understand that, because lots of stuff that we do, even on the edge of Exeter, is really quite rural in some ways. They're not town dominated, other than the large towns that we have. So I actually think there is a need for a rural specific rural strategy, because being a farmer myself and understanding this, when we start to look at green energy and how we're going to probably implement that, other than housing whereby you could put some solar panels on a home, or you could have a heat pump exchange, or whatever you call these things, that's all quite small scale, which all add up individually. I understand that, but really, when we start talking about when we wanted to do, whether we were to do wind farms, whether we're going to do solar farms, whether we're going to do battery farms, whether we're going to do some other type of energy resource, these energy resources on large scales, of course, are in the rural areas. So the impact in the rural areas is quite big. So I think a study around this in working with farming and how that farming works very much within the clean energy agenda is really almost a study on its own. But I don't know whether you want to bring this, Chair, through you. I don't know if you want to bring this particular document through another channel, or whether or not you just want to. It'd be quite nice just to touch on it now, and it would give us much more food for thought at a later date. And that's, sorry, Councillor Haywood, I'm not aiming it just generally at you, but it is for all of us to understand that. But you've got the economic agenda, and it's just trying to get to that point, really.
Well, we certainly have a proposal on the table in the forward plan to look specifically at the energy versus food issue. But obviously, Councillor Haywood, you want to comment about what's already been said. So if you're going to disappear, you better get your 2 cents worth in.
My phone's already bleeped to say the dinner's in the dog, but it's only a small dog. So I suppose this comes back to an ongoing issue in that, yes, we always have to look at food production versus other use, but it's a question of how can a local authority compel a landowner to do a particular thing. You know, if landowners did not sell their fields to developers, then we wouldn't have development of fields. Landowners, certainly, you know, you have them in your neck of the woods, Councillor Skinner, certainly in Yardley, in Hawkchurch, there has been a proliferation of landowners giving up their fields for solar panels. It's a pressing matter, certainly to Hawkchurch parishioners and residents. But can this authority compel any landowner to grow anything? You know, arguably, when we go back, you know, you can grow rapeseed, rape produce for biofuels. You can decide to grow turnips if you want, or anything. But at what point, and I'd welcome this debate, and I know within the report here, we make reference to having representations from the NFU. I think that would be really handy, is to get the view. Now, we're very lucky on this council. We do have representations from Councillor Skinner, a farmer, Councillor Key, a farmer. Apologies to any other councillors who I haven't named who are farmers, because you've lived and breathed this way of life for generations. So, you know, you can explain to us the trials and tribulations that come from farming and how it's changing. And I'd be delighted to sit in a meeting with you and find out more. Now, I have quite a few farming connections around here, and they share various things with me. I'm sure some things they don't share with me, but I think it would be very helpful to have representation from the NFU and find out how the industry is changing and how there are financial demands and social demands on farmers to do certain things, but how a district council compels a farmer to grow a particular thing, or whether he gives up his fields to solar farms and thinks that sheep can graze below them. I'm not sure how we have that authority to do it. It's personal choice, surely. But I would welcome a wider debate, Chair, certainly on this. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that it would be useful, simply because if you look at what South Somerset and Somerset generally have done in putting together food chain groups and policies that would enhance that, and that supported also the local food, retail and leisure offers, so that there are things that can be facilitated but not compelled. You're quite right, they can't be compelled, but there are things that we might consider, and maybe you might like to look at how that could be done as a rural policy. David Key.
Thank you, Chair. Just very, very quickly, with regarding to renewable energy, I mean, you know, we have an abundance of rivers, and I just cannot understand why a company has not sort of grabbed hold of this and have water turbines in there, because I know of a farmer, in actual fact, in Dorset, he's had a water turbine installed there. He milks just over 300 cows, and the farm is absolutely self-sufficient in that, as well as putting stuff back into the grid. So, you know, it is important that we try and encourage firms to actually go into this. I mean, I've always been a great advocate that what do you want? Do you want a light to be able to see in the house, or do you want to have something to eat? That is the two most important things in life, I think. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Chair, I've got to ask, what's going on in Councillor Keith's kitchen?
That's the dog. The dog with his
I've wanted to know this for ages.
Sorry, when I'm talking on the Zoom, the dog has a toy here, which I will.
I asked everybody to turn things off, but turning off the dog's squeaky toy seems beyond Councillor Key. Never mind. Anyway, in regard of any other comments at this point, because we'll come to further discussion about the rural side. Councillor Hayward has to leave. Andy, would you be able to stay just a little bit longer? And
just before I get off, Chair, if I might, just to respond to Councillor Key's last comment, I do have an association through All Saints Parish Council with a councillor who owns a vast swathe of North Scotland and has a great amount of experience in hydropower. He's built his own hydroelectric plants on the river that runs through his estate. And I'm sure if this committee or council was willing, he'd be happy to come and talk about the trials and tribulations and the pitfalls of that. I entirely agree with Councillor Key. We are blessed in East Devon with a coastline that has rising tides. Anything that goes up and down with regularity can be used to create power. We have wind blowing in offshore, inshore, out of shore. That can create energy. We are a very sunny part of the world. So actually the means and the source material for renewables is almost unlimited in East Devon. Again, it comes to encouraging businesses to invest and finding the means. Dare I say, weaning ourselves off fossil fuels by subsidies, by legislation, might be the only way we do it. We force the hand and say, you must do it a different way, because we have all the tools, we have all the materials, make use of them. Chair, thank you so much, members. I'm sorry to dash away. I think I can probably get back for pudding. So good night, everyone.
Thanks. See you again soon. Just a question then for Andy on staff. We're not interested in interfering in staff, but one of the things that a number of councils do is they have specialist officers for skills and for finance, inward investment, these kind of areas. And I know you've worked very closely with Devon County Council and One Devon on a number of these things. But do we have a problem getting the balance of skills available to us in regard of the inward investment, finance, support area and the skills area?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to explain how we're resourced currently. At the moment, I think everyone's aware that Rob Murray manages the economic development team. There are then 3 posts that sit underneath that, which have particular areas of focus. So Tom Winters is around investment. Jerry Pantiva does do activity around things like inward investment as well, for example, the tourism strategy that's come through Cabinet recently. And there is also a dedicated skills post, employment skills post as well. The challenge for us has been particularly in relation to the latter post. We've struggled to recruit to that post latterly, which is on a fixed term basis. And that's something that we need to resolve. Currently, it's probably symptomatic of the wider economy, ironically, as well, in that respect. So, but I do think there's a wealth of talent in the team. We've been very grateful for the support of members in terms of substantially increasing the level of capacity within the team generally, and that has doubled over the course of the last 2 years. And one of those posts was recently made permanent through Cabinet as well, which is really helpful as we move forward, particularly through deploying some of those funds that are now, if you like, being cascaded to district council level, such as the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, the Rural Economic Prosperity Fund as well, going forward, Chair.
Thank you very much. Well, at this stage, what I'd like to do is just scoop together some of the comments that have been made and say how grateful we are, Andy, because I'm sure you wrote a lot of the report which Councillor Hayward presented alongside a lot of the work that Rob Murray and Jerry Pasteva have done. It's the thing that I found with the report is it's extremely detailed, but I'm finding it difficult to pick out the strategy in it. And so maybe another time we could look more high level at the strategic range of things that you're doing. But thank you very much for such an excellent variety of actions. And I don't know how you've got rid of £94 million so fast. I mean, it is probably quite unique that we've had so much in the way of grants to get through to the people who need it so fast. Anybody last comments at all before we leave this particular issue? No? Okay, so we'll pick up on the proposal for rural policy development after a 5-minute break. So literally 5-minute break. Thank you.
I could just ask members to remain on mute and have their cameras off while we're on a break. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I think we're ready to restart whenever you're ready.
Okay, if we can bring up the slides for the rural policy issue.
Yes, certainly.
Nothing's happening my end. There we go. Right. I'm very grateful that Councillor Hayward was positive about the need for a rural strategy. Let me just explain very briefly. If you look at our area, 2/3 of the land, 70% of the population, 60% of the business is inside rural areas. If we can go to the next slide. So quite a large issue about whether or not we were right in putting all our resources into the West End and Exmouth in terms of development. And in 2019, Overview did request a rural strategy, and since the new local plan is out for consultation, it does seem that we are lacking capacity to pull together a rural economic and strategy. Now, there are some assets available to us. The all-person parliamentary group issued a report on the rural economy recently, and it's noted in the report that you have. What really I'm asking is that Scrutiny should comment on the need for a rural strategy and which, if any, issues should be explored and how. So if we can go to the next slide. This is our council plan. And our council plan says that we believe in donut economics. And if you look in the middle, it's all to do with water, food, energy, health, and so on. And the outer side is all about climate change and ocean acidification and fresh water and so on. And in between is space for humanity. And the question for us is, what part do we play in shaping that particular donut economics policy inside East Devon? And if we go to the next one. So with the energy and supply costs, with Brexit, with food versus PV we've been talking about, with the food chain, with the ongoing gentrification of the area compared to working affordable homes, and into that situation, we found that supply chains of fertilizer, carbon dioxide, and components have all been compromised by the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And fortunately, we have had a lot of effort gone into broadband accessibility, and clearly that's vital for the future. So the next slide. I won't go into all of the different elements here, but in terms of the infrastructure we need, in terms of enabling innovative businesses to grow in the rural areas, and in terms of developing companies, what we find nationally and locally is that the rural areas often have faster growing, more innovative businesses. And if we can only get the right infrastructure in, then they're likely to generate the kind of economy with the kind of incomes and the kind of employment that we want. So what's our policy with regard to small business units? How can we get helpful planning policies into place? How can we get support for the entrepreneurs, and how can we get them to cluster together? Because a lot of the time, the clusters interbreed, if I can put it that way. If we can go to the next one. This is the actual situation in 2009. And if you look at the sectors in the rural area on the right and the urban area on the left, what you can see is there isn't much difference other than the fact, obviously, that agriculture figures much more highly in the rural areas, but in all the other respects, most of the other industries are all present, and most of the other manufacturing actually takes place inside the rural areas. You wouldn't have expected it, but that's the way it is. So if we can go on to the next one. Now, I think what we have here is a comparison between the old approach, which was all about developing farm income and agriculture in rural areas, and the new approach, which is more widespread throughout the UK, but not necessarily here, is in building added value to the assets locally and the exploitation of those assets in the rural economies. We've got a rural tourism and coastal tourism policy now, but we don't have one for manufacturing or information technology and so on. And the main tools used nationally are to find community volunteers and good investors. And we don't really figure in those areas. And so key thing in the rural areas is getting the stakeholders involved, and the community is essential. So if we go on to the next slide. So we need a review of business space policy, of business support policy in those areas, and the facilities and infrastructure we need to look at how Honiton and Seaton and Sidmouth and other towns in those areas, including the wider AONB areas, are actually going to be supported and grow with the right policies. And on to the next. So we're then faced with an opportunity to make recommendations, and these are simply 3 recommendations I put together. That first of all, we welcome the way that the Hill Consulting report and the tourism strategy has developed along with our cultural policy. Recognise that Devon County Council is also concerned about this gap in housing affordability. And in view of the economic situation, we need perhaps to have an urgent review of corporate strategy for the AONB and rural areas. And obviously, we agree that the need is to invent a good focus on sustainability and green best practice in our rural areas, and link policy and support for businesses with planning for homes, business space, and digital and physical infrastructure and energy. So if we can come off the slides now and leave that, very happy to take any questions or alternative proposals, because that's just a few ideas. What I'm interested is in getting some very positive results for our rural areas out of recommendations for this committee. So we'll start with Councillor Young.
Well, I wasn't expecting that. I'm a bit confused. Where does rural start and urban finish? And persuading businesses to set up in the countryside, I find that rather strange. We want to put industry with other industry and close to the homes and not in the countryside. And have you run this through the NOB? Thank you.
Well, to answer that, first and foremost, obviously we need to put work and homes in close proximity to cut down the unnecessary travel. It just wastes time travelling. But there is no intention to necessarily place large industry in the wrong areas. You're confusing countryside with rural, and rural classification includes the towns in the rural areas technically, and that's what I've been referring to here. And I'm sorry if that was confusing you, but it's not the same thing. We're talking apples and pears.
Right. So you're saying that this is a rural area. So we're looking at planning for businesses in this area, not in the rural area.
We're looking at planning for this rural area as it's designated officially, which is not the West End, and it's not Exmouth, and it is not the necessarily some of the other areas, but the rural areas do need attention. And no, it's not my responsibility to run it through the AONB. That is the responsibility of officers and the council. What I've suggested is that we actually develop an approach for these areas. But don't get it wrong. There are places in Dunkerswell and Membury and various other places where there are small-scale businesses that are doing very well, and we don't necessarily know how to nurture them. So let's get confused about what we're talking about. We're talking about small businesses, often local to other towns and villages. And what's our policy? That's the issue. So let me just go to Councillor Rylance next.
Thank you, Sean. I'm going to try with video. Let's see if we can manage this. So I have to confess I found this report quite confusing as well, not least because I'm quite short-sighted and the fonts just changed all the time. It's like there were bits sort of cut and pasted from other places, and I found that quite confusing. Also, there's an absolute profusion of recommendations and bullet points, and I was left with the overriding impression at the end that actually this is something that should be with strategic planning, surely, in the sort of building the local plan phase of its existence at the moment. It doesn't seem to me that it's something that we should be looking at in scrutiny. I mean, it's so much more strategic planning territory, so to speak. And I just wonder whether it wouldn't be better off being maybe possibly rationalised in its wordiness, because I think 13 pages is an awful lot, streamlined a bit, and then maybe presented to strategic planning at some point as part of the local plan process.
I don't necessarily disagree. That problem is it's not just a strategic planning issue. It's also an economic issue. I don't know whether you wanted to come in yet, Andy. Ed, you're very welcome to at any stage.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on one issue of definition. Members may be aware that we currently have the task of deploying funds, or sorry, more accurately, putting an addendum together to the investment plan for the UK Shared Prosperity Fund monies that was approved by Cabinet back in July. And that is specifically for extra funds, just over £850,000 to be deployed over the next 2 financial years through the Rural England Prosperity Fund. And on the issue of definition, the guidance is very clear that the only area in the entire district that wouldn't benefit from that would be Exmouth, because that is above a population size of 30,000. So I just wanted to put that into the mix, Chair, because that report will be coming to Cabinet on the 2nd of November.
Beautifully put. Thank you very much, Andy. Councillor Skinner.
I think what's trying to achieve is and I don't disagree to a part what Councillor Rylance is saying, going to strategic planning, but strategic planning and that is where we do our policy building. But we need to have places in this authority that we have the ability to debate what it is we're trying to do. We want to formulate some way of how we see policy making. And it's not just to go just to that committee and say, here it is. This is about councillors being involved in that policy formulation in an environment that is a discussing environment like this Scrutiny Committee is. It's where we discuss and can formulate those things. So I welcome lots of things that the ideas that you've put forward, Chair, and I welcome the fact that bringing the rural agenda back. And I actually knew the answer, and I thank Andy Wood for putting it quite clearly, because from my understanding in my days, and I didn't know whether the pitch had moved or whatever, but as I was economy portfolio holder, it was Exmouth was the only one that wasn't. Everything else is deemed to be rural in our patch. So that is the definition of you saying about where we are is really quite important. And what's really important here is that we are an area of entrepreneurial people who want to get up and have a go. And there's more, I believe, more self-employed people in our patch than there is for quite a large area. And I'm not going to start pitching numbers at you. I'm sure Mr. Andy Wood would know far better than I. But we are very entrepreneurial. What we need to do is to set the scene. Our job as a local authority is to set the scene, to give the ability for those people who want to have an opportunity, giving them the ability to have a go at being in business, and how we help to place shape for that to happen, for those businesses to have a go at being in business and succeeding. And that's the sort of format. We do have the ability to place shape. And we do have the ability to try to engage with local businesses and help them. And in whichever area that is, we need to be doing that. And there are some quite rural areas in East Devon that can be a bit in the sticks. And you'd be really surprised how, I'll just give you a prime example, really in the back lanes of Climptree, I've got a young lady who, she probably call herself not so young lady, but I can still call her a young lady, and she does glass blowing. And does some fantastic stuff from her own place and where she works. Lots of little businesses like that bounce up. But for us as a local authority, in the towns where I think we really don't set the scene well enough. I remember trying to do things in Seaton when I was economy portfolio holder, and when really achieved it then, and it hasn't happened either since. That's our job and that's our role. And I very much take on board what you're trying to do, Chair. And I'm very supportive of it. In any way that we can help businesses to place shape in East Devon, I'm very much behind it. I have always been very economically driven, because I think it's from that basis that everything else can grow. So I'm supportive of businesses, and in particularly in the rural areas, and not to be marginalised. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we'll come into the committee, and Councillor Ollie Davey.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned small business units there as though there's a lack of support for those. I'm just a bit confused about where are we not supporting them. Having sat on planning committee over the last few years, we've supported small business units on farms where farms want to diversify. We've supported live-work units in Dunk as well. And we've protected employment land, or attempted to, sometimes in the face of other pressures. And for instance, the Redgate site in Exmouth, that was employment land, and we refused it. An old people's home, sheltered house. I'm not quite sure which it was. I'm trying to find out when it goes up. We tried to resist that on the grounds it was employment land, and it was passed on appeal. So we're doing everything we can to support rural businesses. So I'm not quite sure where you see the obstacles and what you think a rural strategy is going to achieve. You talk about review of the strategy on the AONB, and with what aim? I wonder what would be the purpose of that. Otherwise, we're just kind of making policy that is nothing more than wishful thinking. and it's not really going to be effective. And I mean, Councillor Skinner said, well, this is a good area to discuss these issues. But that's what we do in strategic planning, and Councillor Skinner knows very well because he's a frequent contributor. We have plenty of discussion there, and we make policy. So I don't see myself that this is an issue for scrutiny, because I think if anything needs to be done, it's with strategic planning, and it should go there. There are plenty of issues for rural areas, transport, the proliferation of second homes, and many other issues. But I just don't see what we're really trying to achieve with this. And by the way, Exmouth may be over the 30,000 threshold, but it seems a bit quixotic to simply say, well, the whole of East Devon is a rural area, apart from Exmouth. I mean, we have farms around Exmouth as well, or we try to, but they've been swallowed up for housing as fast as they can go. So I really don't see any reason to exclude Exmouth. And I was brought up in the countryside, by the way, and I worked in a small business in a rural area. Pottery in that case rather than glass blowing, although I knew glass blowers, and we had a very active craft community where I lived in Galloway in southwest Scotland. I'd love to see more of that here, but I want to see where we're standing in the way of that, because sometimes I think the best thing a council can do is just not get in the way, rather than necessarily having to actively encourage these things. Although I'm noted in Councillor Hayward's report the support we have given to those local businesses. And in fact, I was visiting Propeller in Exmouth the other day. Fantastic young people there doing really, really vibrant things. And I suspect, I'm not absolutely sure of this, but the building they're using is probably leased from East Devon District Council. So we may be indirectly supporting them there as well.
Thank you. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of points. First one, you mentioned about food versus PV energy, which kind of links in with Agenda 13 as well, which we'll obviously cover, but there seems to be in tonight's agenda a lot of PV bashing going on, but we'll see what happens. You showed the graph employment by industry, which dates back to 2009, showing the different sectors. Well, that's 13 years old. I mean, have we got a more up-to-date chart showing exactly what the employment by industry is? I sort of agree with Councillor Davey and Councillor Rylance here that I think this is something for strategic planning, and I'm not sure. Yes, we can recommend, but I don't know. And as for mentioning, economic turbulence and the Russian invasion, I don't want to get political about this, but they are nothing more than political soundbites excusing, well, the lack of government support for the so-called levelling up agenda, to be honest. I really do question the validity of a report where some of the citations are dating back 18 years. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to comment? Okay, then I'll come back. The key thing about having a policy for rural areas is to have ways in which we can nurture the economy. We don't actually have a policy. So the whole point of this was to say, do we want a policy that will actually help rural businesses? And so far, what I've heard is that you don't believe anything that is put forward that is any different to an urban policy. That's not true. And nurturing businesses right across our rural areas is a critical thing, which isn't to do with only strategic planning. It's to do with how we support them. It's to do with the training. It's to do with the infrastructure of broadband. All of those things are going on, and they're going on in many detailed ways, but it's not brought together anywhere. Now, I don't mind if you don't want to do anything about it, but my concern is to make sure it's debated, and that's what I set out to do. And Councillor Hayward thought that was a worthwhile thing to do. It can go to overview, it can go to strategic planning, it probably should go to both. And the fact that it's discussed at scrutiny is simply a representation of whether or not we think that this council could improve what it's doing for rural businesses. And if we don't think that it has any improvements that it can make, then we don't need to continue. So, Councillor Rylance.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm still slightly confused. So Andy said that everywhere in East Devon is deemed to be a rural area, apart from Exmouth. So surely every single one of our existing policies is already a rural area policy, unless it specifically applies to Exmouth or an actual urban area. I don't really understand why we're trying to reinvent the wheel, because surely a lot of our existing policies are already rural area policies, because they apply to the whole of the district, which is a rural area. So, I mean, obviously, we're building a new local plan at the moment, and a lot of these things must come forwards, and some things have to be updated. But a lot of things have changed in the last even 3 years, let alone the last 18 years. So, you know, so there are some parts of this report that really do need to be looked at before it can go anywhere, in my opinion. And I do actually agree with what Councillor Kemp said. You know, 18-year-old data, given how much everything has changed, even in the last 3 years, is probably not going to be much use. So I don't really, I suppose, understand quite what it is you want from this, because, you know, given that we have policies that cover the whole of the district, we already have rural area policies, because these policies apply to the whole of the rural area. Do they need changing and updating? Probably yes, they do. But I don't think it's true to say that we don't have policies for a rural area, because clearly we do. Maybe they're not quite right, maybe they need updating, but they are policies for a rural area because they apply to the whole of the district. Anyway, I still stand by my earlier comment that I would like it to go to strategic planning rather than be debated extensively in scrutiny, because I can't really see what the point of doing that is at the moment, when a lot of this stuff could come through the local plan update or local plan rewrite. But, you know, that's my proposition, that's my proposal. If anybody wishes to second that, I'd be very happy, but thank you.
Okay, so proposed by Councillor Rylance that this goes to strategic planning. Does anybody wish to second her?
Yes,
with a rewrite. With a rewrite.
Oh yeah, for no other reason except that I don't believe I have all the answers at all. I'd be delighted to have a rewrite. So the proposal is that this goes to strategic planning with a rewrite. Is that?
Who's going to be doing the rewrite, Chair?
That's what I'm asking you. You're the proposer.
Well, I think maybe if you propose the paper, maybe you should be the one to pull out the bits that you feel are the most important to be looked at. So I suggest that maybe you would like to do the rewrite. I think it's 6 pages long, max.
I don't think it works that way, Councillor Rylance. You're the proposer.
But you put the paper together, Chair. That's what I'm proposing. I'm proposing that the proposer of the report does a rewrite and a condensing and takes out some of the 18-year-old data and puts it forward to strategic planning.
Not my responsibility.
Chair, can I just interject quickly?
Yes,
so,
please.
I mean, this is a fairly difficult position in a sense. I mean, there's a similar point to the earlier discussion, in the sense that this is not an officer report. This is a member paper, and we're going up in the same difficulty of where that goes, particularly if, in light of the conversation that's just happened, councillors are going to be writing papers left, right, and centre, going to all the various committees and so on. For me, the key question here really is there a policy gap that somehow needs to be filled? And I mean, it's worth canvassing the views of Ed and Andy, but I think if the committee felt that there was a policy gap, then that's something that would need to be subject to, again, further report on what a report's going to look like. So there's going to have to be an officer report in there somewhere, I think. So if the committee is so minded to suggest there's further work on this, then I think that should be form the focus of the recommendation, i.e. there should be a further officer report on this. For me, the question where it goes, because I think there's a tension there in that overarching strategic position. Of course, the local plan sits on the top of our policy framework, and much of our work flows from it. So is this something that has to be addressed through the local plan, or is there a bespoke policy approach that needs to be adopted? If it's the latter, then I think that's probably more likely, again, to go to cabinet than it is needing to be dealt with through the local plan. So I think there's still a bit of ironing out here from the committee, or the committee can take the view that actually there is no policy gap and there's nothing that needs to be done because it's already being dealt with appropriately through the local plan or other policy initiatives, and the matter can be left. But for me, that's the point. You've either got to say it's fine, nothing doing, or there is a policy gap of some description that needs to be dealt with, and there needs to be a further scoping initiative and recommendations that go with that. Thank you.
That's very helpful, Henry. And I think that that it is important. I did try to get an officer report on this issue, and the answer was, yes, there is a need, but we don't have the resources to do it. That's why I did it inadequately.
Yeah, sorry, there's a difference between, sorry, yes, okay, I take it in the sense that you've done the report rather than asking an officer to bring it forward, but I think the question still pertains to, having done that, is there a policy gap that needs to be filled? That's the crux of the issue.
Yes, I agree with you. So, in many respects, I would like to know whether or not you want to put forward the proposal to look at the rural policy area. And Councillor Davey and Councillor Rylance has obviously made your viewpoints known. Come back and let me know what you want to do.
If I may, I would actually like to can my previous.
Davey first, please.
Oh, right. Okay. Thank you, Chair. I wasn't quite sure which order we were going in. Can we just say that we note the report, just as we do with officer reports then? I mean, we have noted it. We have had a good look at it. And I understand what you're trying to say here, but as has already been pointed out, if East Devon is a rural area, then strategic planning is planning for all the aspects of East Devon, and I feel it does. We have policies on rural businesses such as holiday lets and work-live units. We have all sorts of policies on those anyway, you're a member of strategic planning. Why not make those points there and fight the corner for if you feel that rural businesses are being sidelined? But personally, I don't think they are. So I think perhaps we should just settle for noting the report.
Okay, Councillor Rylance.
I completely agree with Councillor Davey. I don't personally feel there is a policy gap. I think that everything that you mentioned can be updated through the things that are already underway, and I don't want to take up any more officer time on this, to be honest. So I'm perfectly happy to go with Councillor Davey's suggestion that we note the report and don't refer it.
Fine. I'd just like to tidy this up. I did ask earlier whether the liaison between economic development and planning was happening, and it was suggested that come November the 1st, there would be an economic element presented for the local plan. That's correct, isn't it, Andy? Yes.
Through you, Chair. There is an economic element to the local plan as being presented to Strategic Planning Committee tomorrow. There is a draft plan with an economic development strategy and chapter in that draft plan for members to consider tomorrow. It will then, following members' debate tomorrow, be amended, updated, following members' instructions, and a final version presented on the 1st of November for consultation.
Good. That seems to wrap up what Councillor Davey and Councillor Rylance think. I will continue my campaign to make sure that rural businesses get the right amount of attention. And I'd just like to thank you for listening. I have no wish to insist that my way of doing things is any better. I only put this report together because nobody else did. So, happy to drop it, and that's the decision.
You need to just go to the vote, Chair, if you don't mind, because it's only a proposal at this stage.
Okay, let's come up with the vote on that, Sarah, please.
Can you please reiterate what it is we're voting on as well?
Yes, through you, Chair. So it's effectively to note the report at this stage and nothing further.
Okay, fine. If you agree with that, please raise your appropriate. Sorry, Sarah, I'm doing your job.
Yeah, no, that's fine, Chair. Thank you. So voting is underway, and that's 5 green ticks in favour. No abstentions, none against.
Okay, fine. Carried. Let's therefore move to the next part of the agenda. I believe that there was a quarterly performance report on pages 47 to 94. I only got part of that, so I'm not sure exactly how much is in the agenda. Can we just double check?
I suspect that you might have opened the report, Chair, and not the appendices. So the appendices should be in there.
Yes, I was looking at the service plan objectives. Has anybody got any particular wish to comment on the service plan objectives update or the annual quarterly performance report as it's on the agenda? Has anybody got any comments? Okay, that is excellent. I was hoping that would be the case. Now let's move, therefore, to the forward plan.
Sorry, Chair, just so we're noting, that's for noting then, is it?
It's for noting, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And looking at the forward plan, what I'd like to do is bring forward the issue of food versus energy as part of the forward plan. That was a proposal which was put forward as an illustration of how these proposal forms can be used in Scrutiny Committee. And in fact, it was guided by Henry to show how a proposal should be put forward. So just want to say that this arose out of a discussion with regard to serious concerns about the extent to which rural land was being covered with PV panels and the balance between agriculture and energy production. Now, the question really is, should we look at this as a committee? And a lot of people have actually put forward their concerns, not only about this, but also about the biogeneration aspects of energy. So you can, and have read the proposal. I don't propose to go all through it again. Anybody want to make a comment? First one in was Councillor Jeff Young, outside the committee.
It's me again. As portfolio holder for Coast, Country and Environment, I have to wear two hats. I feel we should be protecting the countryside, but at the same time, we have got an energy crisis, and solar panels and possibly wind farms are one of the answers that will provide us with energy. By the sound of it, we're going to have power cuts this winter, according to the news last night. So no, we have got major concerns with power. A new nuclear power station would take 20 years to build. The small nuclear power stations that they're talking about is a 25-year development program. So we have got tremendous problems with generating energy. But personally, I hate solar farms on green fields. I find them hideous. But we've got to have power somehow. So now there's that anomaly we've got to get over. How much of our countryside can we put over to solar farms? How much can we put up with noisy wind farms? Or do we have them off the coast? Can we have them off the coast here? Is another question. As for anaerobic digesters, I think it's been now proven that it doesn't benefit the countryside. It doesn't benefit food production. It only benefits the producers of the electricity that it uses, and benefits the farmers that feed it with maize that destroys our soil. So no, definitely AD has got to be a no-no, and we need to have a real big thought on where we're going to put our solar farms. They can't go in the ANOB for obvious reasons. So that's the 1/3 of East Devon left that we need to provide housing for. We need to put solar farms on. We need country parks. There's not much of the countryside left, is there? But I'll leave that to the committee to decide.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Councillor Skinner.
I think we can have the debate. We can talk all night long, but I think the question you were asking was whether or not we want to bring this debate forward for another meeting. Was that the question you were asking?
Yeah, the question was, do we need to look at this as a scrutiny committee? Is there a need to look at it? And is there, again, a policy gap or a performance issue that we can help the council with?
On that basis, then, Chair, absolutely. I've got in my patch, as I said to you, as said earlier on in this meeting, I've got probably getting on for 1,000 acres of solar panels coming my way. I've got 600 acres in the pot already, and that's including the one that's just over my border from me at Plymtree into mid Devon there. So I find it a subject which is absolutely massive in the context between food versus energy. And what I would like to do, and I would like to see, this is such a big issue that I would like to see us have a discussion with some expertise of people who could actually come and talk about energy, that they know what they're talking about. And I take on board what Councillor Young had to say, but in fact, as far as I'm concerned, that was just his personal viewpoint. I don't know that he was accurate with so much of it, but that's his viewpoint, and he can have his viewpoint, and he's entitled to it, and I respect that. But some of the stuff that he said wasn't accurate, so therefore what we do need, I don't want to hear hearsay from people who just have a point of view, because that doesn't actually take us anywhere at all. What I really want to do is have a real discussion, and I'm already doing this and having some meetings with the NFU. We're doing all this stuff anyway, but have a real discussion with this authority to be actually learn something from what is the best way forward, because this is the turning point, the critical point about where we see energy coming from. And I'm all supportive of energy in one aspect, but I'm sure if Councillor Young had 1,000 acres coming in around his patch, I wouldn't be quite so quick in saying, oh, we are where we are, and this is energy, and this is where it is, and it takes 25 years to have a nuclear power plant. Those sort of viewpoints are just off the cuff viewpoints, and what I want to do is I want to get to the point, Chair, through you, whereby if we're going to have a discussion about this, we have a proper discussion about people who are actually skilled in the field and understand what they're talking about, and we can put forward the pros and the cons of the benefits of what come from such solar farms or whatever usage we see, or not. And by doing that, just having a discussion amongst ourselves, that doesn't cut it for me. What I want to see is Scrutiny have the real ability to have a real proper debate, because it's a very, very serious issue for us in this part of the world. And I can tell you this much, it's a very serious issue for lots of people in East Devon as well. And they've got very, very strong views on it. So there's lots of people out there, and I know because I've just had a planning application come in my patch with a solar farm, 49.9 megawatt. Solar farm, and there are lots of people out there, I can tell you, who are very, very knowledgeable in the field of energy. So let's try and see if we can garner some of those people together and hear what they've got to say, and put some real meat on the bone, and not just innuendo from personal comments from people who just have a personal view on what they happen to think. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Key.
I thought you were ignoring me because I looked up on my table and mine was the first hand up, but then I'll let you off this time. Anyway,
you're in committee, sir. I was going with outside first.
Oh, I see. All right, I'll let you off. No, I mean, the thing is, I'm very much and always have been against solar panels, because it's taking up, if you were going to put them, and it's not possible to do it on the likes of Dartmoor or somewhere like that, then fine, because that is land that is less productive than the land we've actually seen go under these panels. Now, inland wind farms now have been given the green light after a 7-year ban. So there's the possibility we come. I know they give a bit of noise, but I've been down in Cornwall where there are some very big ones down there, and you don't really take that much notice of them. What was interesting in the press the other day was this 18 billion Sahara solar farm that was going to help. And they were going to put it on the Sahara Desert, which couldn't be better, because they've got sun there all the time and would produce a tremendous amount of electricity. But I'm still saying that we have an abundance of rivers and the sea on 2 coasts here. Why are we not looking to actual water turbines? Because they will produce a lot of electricity. They will go for 24 hours a day, not like your solar panels, which produce nothing at night time, only in the light, right? That, I just can't understand why there hasn't been more companies that have come forward with the water turbines. But I'd like to go into that a lot further if we can put that on as a main subject for the scrutiny at some time. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that is all part of reviewing this energy production versus food issue. I do remember this was reviewed in Dorset, and they found that if they used every river in Dorset, that probably it would be equivalent to about 3 large wind turbines. So we have really, and I take Councillor Skinner's point, we can pool ignorance here, or we can ask for a comprehensive report on the issue with people who know what they're talking about, bringing a balance in. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry,
Well,
can I very quickly?
Yeah.
I think can I just reassure? I think that's the right approach here, because we run the risk of debating this all night long. If I may make a suggestion, I think the question is there anybody who's opposed to taking this on the full plan and actually having that? And if nobody's really opposed to it, don't you just go straight to the vote and get it into the full plan? Otherwise, we're going to be here for hours.
Well done, Henry. Well done, Henry.
I'm trying to be appropriate.
Well done, Henry. Yeah.
Henry is suggesting we go to a vote. Councillor Davey, Councillor Kemp.
Well, sorry, I wasn't quite saying that. I was saying it's about sensing whether or not there's any opposition to having it on the full plan. And if there is, then you have the debate, don't you? But if there isn't, it just you'll be rehearsing what you're going to have an argument about next time.
Yes, yeah. And I appreciate that. Councillor Davey, are you happy or opposed?
Well, I'm still not quite sure. Again, what we're trying to achieve. It's well, you may find that exasperating, Councillor Skinner. But,
I do.
Yeah, well, that's fine. But just turn your mic off and let me finish, please.
Yeah, I don't want interruptions. Thank you. Firstly,
I totally agree that solar panels are better on roofs, and I've got them on mine. We do have an energy crisis. We have an enormous energy crisis. We don't actually have a food crisis, and there's a kind of false dichotomy being set up here between food and energy. I'm not convinced that some of that land is being used for food. Farms are diversifying in all sorts of ways, and one of the reasons is, and Councillor Skinner will be able to back me up on this one, I hope, that it is really hard to make a living out of growing food in this country because you're constantly in competition with cheap imports. So farms are diversifying, they're opening up caravan parks, having holiday lets, business units, storage units. So that's just another aspect of farm diversification, to turn over some land for solar power. Okay. And as Councillor Hayward said, you can't tell people what to do with their land. But this is going to come up at strategic planning tomorrow if we wish it to. The local plan says it'll support it unless there are unacceptable impacts. And we've had planning applications where we've looked and decided whether those aspects are unacceptable. I'm not quite sure why people get so exercised about solar farms. There's a load of solar panels over the countryside. Well, you will see fleece covering large fields. You're soon going to see housing all over fields. So I'm not quite sure why this particular issue is being singled out, and why we're making this suggestion that somehow if we put solar panels on some land, that it is then taken out of food production. Because I'm not convinced that it was in food production in the first place, or that food production was particularly productive.
Yes. So, Councillor Davey, do you or do you not think this should be discussed, put on our forward plan?
I'm quite happy to debate renewable energy in the forward plan, but I don't want it to become a discussion of food versus energy, because that is not actually an issue.
It isn't for you. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to repeat, because obviously it's
been quite long tonight. The whole what you'd like to consider, I do welcome it, and I think it should be discussed. However, it should not be discussed in so much as PVs. You know, we should be discussing the whole forms of renewable energy across East Devon: solar, anaerobic digestion, wind, hydro, tidal, and geothermal. Okay, we can't just pin it to PVs. And if that's the case, and you're happy to suggest that we go that way, and it is all renewable energy, then can I suggest then also that we come together with Mid Devon with the joint scrutiny meeting on anaerobic digestion that they put to us last year, I think it was October, that has been put off and off and off and off. Why the heck aren't we talking about that? Because that will have a massive influence into what we discuss. You get, you know, a PV farm up the road that will supply 15,000 homes, takes up 150 acres. You got the AD plant down in Cliftonbury, which is harvesting 800 acres worth of crop to stick in it, and it provides enough energy for 5,000 homes. It's ridiculous. We can't just be looking at PVs. Yeah, I don't like them. They don't look very pretty. But at the end of the day, we're going to suffer unless we do something serious about this. So please, let's discuss this, but for all renewable energy that East Devon could possibly ever use. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So as far as I can see, there's an appetite for having a proper look at renewable energy in this area, and that is really what has been proposed. Let's take a vote on that, please.
So, Chair, I take it this is a vote in favour of adding this to the plan to look at the renewable energy provision,
yeah,
stroke future of in East Devon.
Thank you, Henry.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So that's 5 green ticks in favour of that. No red crosses, no abstentions.
Good, thank you. Let's just very briefly move to the second form, which is to look at the implications of the integration of health and social care and its impacts on our services. I don't know whether John Golding is still around. He was particularly concerned that he would be involved in that discussion. John.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, yes, you're right to highlight this. So this is One Devon, which is a relatively new collaboration between NHS, local councils, the voluntary sector. They're all trying to work together with the aim of improving the lives of people in Devon, which is laudable, and have a sort of single joined up system. And as I think you've pointed out, Chair, this will have an impact on our public health strategy that we have, and probably other strategies as well, again, in your recommendation. It is work in progress, so I'm going to a meeting next week, which is about Change Leaders event it's billed as, and it's to help prepare the integrated care strategy that's going to be finalised by December. So I think timing is critical, and our public health strategy runs out in 2023 anyway. So I think once we've got better visibility of this sort of integrated care programme and partnership approach, then yes, we will need to review our public health strategy and make sure it aligns. In the meantime, the work that I've seen published makes very little mention of public health and environmental health, and that's something I'll be lobbying in terms of a kind of the joined up approach that we need to include not just primary care and the welfare sort of work that Devon County do, but also the public health work that we and County do. Hopefully that's useful, Chair.
Yep, thank you, John. Eleanor Rylance, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I presume that our involvement in this would fall in two sort of main categories, which is firstly the public health aspect, but also possibly some social prescribing. I mean, I don't. So obviously, we do need to. It's clear we do need to update this policy. Is scrutiny the place where that usually gets done, or is it something that's done by a different body? So yeah, that's it.
The short answer to that is the only question here is, do you want to put it on the forward agenda for scrutiny to look at? And what I proposed to do was simply have either a short workshop or a presentation to explain to scrutiny what it is, and then scrutiny could make any propositions for looking at particular policy areas. Our job is to sort of enhance what council does, not to create policy. And I think we've got to be careful.
Yeah, precisely.
We don't go into creating policy. All we're doing here is we're saying, do we need to look at it? I believe we do. And that's the proposal. So if nobody else has got any comments to make, can we go to a vote to include it on the forward plan, please?
Thank you, Chair. Voting's underway. 6 green ticks in favour, no red crosses, no abstentions.
Good. Well, we'll look forward to a suitable presentation to educate us. And thank you very much, John, for highlighting why we need to do it. The rest of the forward plan, I presume, is fairly straightforward. A lot of activity going into the South West Water thing, which is what Councillor Jess Bailey in particular was championing. But also next time we have annual reports from Councillor Jack Rowlands and from Councillor Paul Arnott. But since Councillor Paul Arnott will be transferring that responsibility to Councillor Dan Ledger on the 1st of November, I think we better replace one name with the other. Anybody else got any other comments? Anybody oppose anything in the forward plan? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the 3rd of November, you've got the report on reviewing economic development policy in rural areas. Is that what we discussed this evening?
Yes, that's what we discussed this evening. So that was in error. That's
fine. Can we look at moving this Mid Devon scrutiny meeting forward, please? It's been going on for far too long.
Yeah, I better explain. I've been constantly trying to get it, and I did suggest that it went to strategic planning, and unfortunately, Councillor Arnott said no. I then took it to the Chief Executive, and he said, well, in view of the fact that we've just got, and this is before Trust took over, we've got a new policy coming forward on the area. Why don't we wait until that happens? As far as I'm concerned, I'm very happy to go forward with the renewable energy review and include it into that particular discussion. The sticking point is combining it with Mid Devon. Now, if you've got a solution to that, I'll be delighted to hear it.
Well, I mean, I spoke to the chair of Mid Devon Scrutiny recently. He said that he's not heard anything back from East Devon at all. And he's spoken to other neighbouring districts that have had discussions, but they was quite disappointed that he's not heard anything. So I don't know. I mean, it's not in my position to do. That's
not accurate, because I did write back and explain this situation to him. And I don't know why you've been misinformed.
If I may, I actually saw him on Monday, and he said the same thing.
Excuse me, Councillor Reynolds, I'm asking Councillor Arnott to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I don't have any recollection whatsoever of you asking for this to come to strategic planning. Just to be very clear, I have never, in my time on strategic planning, had suggested to me or suggested any item for strategic planning that hasn't come through the offices. And I wouldn't do that because it's such a sensitive thing. So I'm not quite sure where you got that impression from. I just wanted to correct the record. Nobody has said to me, can this subject go on strategic planning? My understanding has been exactly as you said, Chair. I think the CEO did say, let's wait for a bit of national policy, but equally, and I'm not on the committee, but I would have a great deal of sympathy with Councillor Kemp and Councillor Rylance, which is that you have or the council has another go. You know, there does seem to be a need, particularly around these ADs to meet. So, you know, I would very much support whatever the council can do to do that through whichever committee, and scrutiny seems the right place.
Okay. The short answer to that is that I can send you an email which illustrates your response to me. So you did see it. Obviously, your recollection with all the weight that you carry isn't too good.
Well, you said that I said no to it. It's just the type of thing I wouldn't say just no like that. It might have been that I referred you to what the CEO had said. That's possible.
Councillor Rylance did want to say something. I didn't want to be interrupted. Do you want to say anything now?
I just wanted to say that I saw the chair of scrutiny at Mid Devon on Monday, and he said he definitely hadn't had an answer yet. Well,
I definitely gave an answer to an appropriate officer. So as far as I'm concerned, I want this to happen. So are you saying, as a committee, that you want to put this on the forward plan, please? Somebody give me a proposal.
I would, yep. I propose that we do that.
Seconder?
Yes, please.
Sorry, can I just check? Isn't this already in train? It's just a need to organise a joint meeting with Mid Devon.
Exactly what we're saying, that it will come to scrutiny and that we will now organise it.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody disagree? Fine. Let's just vote.
Thank you, Chair. So that's 5 green ticks in favour of that.
Good. Okay. Fine. Let's do it. And thank you very much for the range of discussions we've had tonight. I totally welcome criticism, and I hope at some stage or another somebody from Scrutiny Committee will actually put forward proposals, because we need to make sure that we're looking to enhance the activities of our council, and that's what we're here for. So thank you very much, everybody. And